Well, today I am here with my Honda CB1100, and it's a long overdue day. I'm filming my review after 20,000 plus miles of owning this thing. Put about 20,000 miles on it last year, and I wanted to talk about what it's like to own, talk about the bike specs and features a little bit, and talk about what it's like to ride. When this bike came out, it had a $12,199 MSRP. That was a lot, especially compared to its rivals. It is not that impressive on paper, so I don't think it was a sales hit by any stretch of the imagination. It's 562 pounds wet. It's only got a mid 80 horsepower figure for, an 1100 engine, which is not very impressive. So between the weight and the high price and the mediocre horsepower, people just weren't buying them. You got dual piston brakes up front, regular disc brake in the back, linked ABS, so you slide one, I think it activates the other. I've never really had it interfere. It's certainly not a nanny system. It's not going to interrupt you in normal day-to-day driving. Honda's probably made a billion of these little inline-4 engines. It's dead simple, dead reliable, and the retro naked authenticity of the bike, without a lot of features or fairings, makes it really easy to maintain. I do almost all my own maintenance, and the maintenance intervals are pretty reasonable on this bike. They're saying 8,000 mile oil change. You don't even need to replace the filter every time, although I go a little bit more than that. The biggest pain would be valve adjustments every 12,000 or so. Most people just double that. It's about $500 each time, and they're not known for having valves out of spec. Very reliable, but it's a pain in the ass when you want to do it. Tires are another pain. Really, everything seems so well thought out on this bike, but the oddball tire sizes mean your tire choices are a little bit limited. Not particularly hard to do, but they're limited. And on the EX model, unlike the previous standard models at least, you've got inner tube tires, which can be a pain. Adds another $20-$40 each time you got to replace your tires. Everything else is standard. Oil changes every 8,000 miles or so. Spark plugs, they say every 12,000. You could do a little bit longer intervals because I check and they're in really good shape. But because of the way there are no fairings and everything's so exposed, it's really easy. They're all right there. If you've got the right tools, you can do all your own adjustments, except for the valve adjustments, very easily, even without a garage. So I live in an apartment in LA, and I just do this, AutoZone parking lot, 5 minutes in and out. If you want to do your brake pads, right there, super easy. Nothing is difficult, nothing is poorly thought out. So if you own this, you don't have a ton of money for maintenance, but you want to ride every day, this bike is reliable and it's easy to maintain. So I would highly recommend this bike for that reason. Well, that's enough talking about everything you can find on the internet. I wanted to talk about what it's like to ride. My initial impression getting the bike off the kickstand is that you can really feel the weight here. As I mentioned, it's a 560-pound bike fully loaded. When you're riding it, you don't really feel the weight. It handles low-speed maneuvers really well. Part of that could be the really light clutch pull, but trying to roll it around while you're standing beside it, you can really tell. Ergonomically, the bike is very neutral. The mid-pegs under your butt and the bars are fairly upright. It's a comfortable bike. I'm 5'10" with a 33-inch inseam and can very easily flat-foot the bike, but it's wide, so I don't know if it's the side panels or just the frame, but when you're at a stoplight, shorter riders may have some trouble with that. Even when you're sitting up on it, the tank feels wide compared to a lot of others, especially like the T120 or the Moto Guzzi, which other people are cross-shopping. It's not uncomfortably wide. It makes gripping the tank with your knees pretty instinctual, but it's wide. That's just initial impression. The wide and heavy chassis comes with a wide and hefty seat, which keeps your butt alive on long rides and lends itself well to two-up riding. My girlfriend and I have done plenty of day-long rides on this bike. I think my furthest was 700 miles in a day, but I did that one solo. She would not be able to handle it. And speaking of long trips, the EX models have a bigger tank than previous standard models, which it's up to 4.3 gallons. I usually refill the tank around 150, 160 miles, but if I really tried, I could get over 200 miles of the tank. I think my 25,000 mile average miles per gallon is 43 miles a gallon. So not too bad, but not great. Bear in mind, I also commute on this bike in city traffic with a lot of lane splitting required. The size of the bike is not a limiting factor, really. I have no issues doing that day in, day out, except that the included mirrors, which I like because they help a lot with visibility, they are at car mirror height, and that can be problematic in very tight quarters, like when you're filtering up to the front of a stoplight. There aren't a lot of features on the bike. It's just a really retro riding experience. The ABS is unobtrusive, the LED lighting makes it easy to be seen by cars, the dash is really pretty at night. I will say, although the headlight is bright enough to be seen, the pattern it throws is pretty useless, so if you're planning a lot of late night country riding, you may want to grab some auxiliary lights. So ultimately, I kind of wanted to talk about who this bike is for. It can do a lot of things really well. It's comfortable enough for long rides, but unlike a real touring bike, it's not so bulky you'd consider skipping it on a quick trip around the neighborhood. It's not a sports bike, but it'll keep up with your fast friends in the canyons well enough too. I won't pretend it's without its limits, though. It's not an ADV bike, period. I did some dirt and it was very scary, and that oil pan is just aching to be pierced by a rock. It's got no wind protection, it's not a small bike, not particularly efficient, but for most people who can only have one bike, it's a really solid contender. Compared to a lot of modern, naked, standard bikes, it doesn't perform the same. It's not a hooligan bike. The CB1100F is a better city bike. It's 70 miles a gallon, it's light, it's easy, but I need to look at my bike every time I walk away and say, yep, that's my bike. And I don't on a lot of more modern bikes. For me, the retro styling really speaks to me. It's a great all-around bike for people who can only have one bike. It's a really solid contender if that's what you're in the market for. Compared to some of its rivals, the T120, the Moto Guzzi, it's really similar in a lot of ways. Their power delivery is very different. The T120 is very similar, and I would not feel upset if I had gone for one or the other, but I'm very happy I got the Honda. The build quality is amazing. I think even better than the Triumphs, and they've done a really good job this time. I prefer the linear power delivery. The transmission is effortless with a really great mechanical click, and I'm just overall very happy with the bike. But of course, if you need a sports bike, there are sort of retro-ish bikes with a little bit more performance. The R9T, the XSR 900s, even the 700's probably faster than this. I did not enjoy sitting on those bikes as much as I do this, and that's really important if you're going to be spending a lot of time in the seat. So it is obviously up to a point a very subjective matter. So I hope this review kind of helps. I hope it gives you an idea of why I chose it and why I chose it again after I crashed my last one. If you have any questions, obviously leave a comment below. Well guys, what else can I say that I haven't already said? To me, this is the perfect bike. It can't do ADV, it's not a cruiser, but you can absolutely go touring 1 or 2 up. Short distances are great. The weight and the low power figures, that's just on paper, because when you get this bike out onto the streets in real life, you find that it's a very comfortable, smooth, just enjoyable bike to ride. It encourages you to ride however you like. It doesn't force you into a niche. It's a jack of all trades, and if you're looking for something like that you can ride every day dependably without having to spend a lot on maintenance, this is the perfect bike. If you like the styling, it's fun, it's cheap, and like I said, although the MSRP may have been high, you can get these for a steal now. So if you find one on Craigslist or new old stock in a dealer lot, definitely consider picking one up.